The planet is restless, Captain. They want their podcast, and they shall have it. I'll beam down to the surface. You have the bridge. Captain, that is illogical. These are Trek fans. They will challenge and dissect your knowledge with great emotion. It is a mission fraught with danger, peril, and grave risk. Suggestions? Send in the red shirts.
Ladies and gentlemen, Omarosa's got her tapes, but we've got our Star Trek tapes right here, right now. Let's go. And you might hear some laughter in the background. That would be, well, here we go. I'm going to introduce my crew first. And I believe we have some royalty, some admirals from Starfleet in the pattern buffer. They can hold for a second. I'm going to introduce my crew first. First we have, I'm going to put him at, I'm going to make him my science officer for this mission. That would be Craig J., who was absent, I think, twice in a row. Is that correct?
Terrible.
Big Sexy? He was
that would be correct.
I don't know.
Yeah, bad. Terrible.
I'm starting to think
member.
like the episode of Power Play, TNG Power Play, where they were taken over by criminal spirits. I don't know, Craig. We might have to subject you to a test. Oh, no. Big Sexy. Remember DS9 when Cisco tried to give the test to his dad?
Oh, yeah. Dad was not going for
the changeling test. We had to give Craig the changeling test. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How's everyone doing?
We're good. Now, I'm going to put him at number one. He's earned it. And that would be Big Sexy. How are you, sir?
Oh, let's see how long that keeps up. I am well. I'll be back in the bowels of waste extraction next week. We all know.
Never say bowels. I don't like that word. I just hate that word.
Don't like bowels, huh?
Bowels and the word dictum. I hate that word. It just
Then you couldn't be a lawyer then.
Yeah, I guess not.
Sounds like something Weinstein did.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, you heard it, guys. You heard it. That biting satirical wit comes from one of our two guests, esteemed guests. That would be Tom Connors of Midnight's Edge. Tom, how are you, sir?
I am doing the best I can. How about you guys? Glad to be back.
Doing good. And go ahead and introduce your partner in crime there.
My partner in crime, of course, is the voice of Midnight's Edge, the one, the only Robo Shlomo himself, Robb Gallo. How are you doing today, good sir?
No, thank the maker. I'm back for another episode.
What? Stop the show. Did you just quote a Star Wars quote?
No. The maker is Dr. Sung. That's my maker.
Yeah.
You cleaned it up good. I thought you were going to say,
maker.
Thank the maker. This all about this going to feel so good.
No, Dr. Sung, I'm teeing up the positronic matrix there. I'm ready to engage with you good people.
Okay. All right. Well, if you
saved.
If you quote from the original trilogy of Star Wars, you're good with me.
Oh, yeah. That is the original.
And Rogue One. You can quote from Rogue One. I'm good with Rogue One.
Is there any quotable lines from Rogue One?
I don't think so. Hey, what's that big thing in the sky?
I'd say the only good line I can remember is when KTSO or whatever goes, "How come she gets a gun?" or something like that. That's about the closest thing I can think of.
Well, maybe, the only quotes I can think of, ugh, take it, grab it, when Darth Vader is...
Sounds like a good Saturday night, too.
Yeah, that didn't come out the right way.
I think you said your kids listen or whatever, so yeah, we'll try and keep it PG.
Okay, let me... wait,
skip foreplay, go right to the main event there.
Rob, let me grab that broom and clean that back up. The joke I was trying to do was things that those rebel troopers would have said when Darth Vader was walking down that hallway.
We're playing $25,000 pyramid now. Look out! He's got a lightsaber. Ouch! He got Henry. Things rebels would say when they get attacked by Darth Vader. Ding!
Yeah, my version of that sounded a little bit more deep throatish. So please forgive me. All right, enough of the antics. Okay. First, let me say, these two guys, Tom and Rob, are from Midnight's Edge. I highly implore you to go to YouTube, search on Midnight's Edge. These guys are doing their thing. I tell you, if the red shirts have to fall to any other Star Trek oriented organization, I would gladly let it be them because they bring the news. I'm always listening to them, listening to their, looking at their videos on YouTube. And you guys did a tremendous amount of, I'm going to call it journalism, Star Trek journalism, because you released a video, I don't know, a week and a half ago.
I'd say about a week ago,
The
yeah.
Picard one was, just barely a week ago.
And that video breaks down, I mean, to its cellular components and leaves it in the angular confinement beam about what's going on with Star Trek. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, I just want to ask you guys, since we have you on the show, tell me, and no holds barred, like I need to tell you guys that, your final thoughts about the first season of Discovery. Just briefly.
Tom, you want to go first?
Uh-oh, here we go.
Well, I just have to preface by saying, as far as the videos go, Andre deserves a lot of credit. He does so much as far as like a producer and a director to make sure that Rob and I have the best stuff to work with when we put these together. As far as Discovery,
okay.
I'm going to try and be as PG as I can, I guess. It was a litmus test in... You ever watch, if you have a favorite sports team and they're just playing horribly,
listen,
just embarrassingly bad to the
wait,
point.
Hold on. Let me answer that. I grew up in Indianapolis. I'm an Indianapolis Colts fan.
Okay, so you know what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where, it's like no matter how bad you want to root for them, and there's things that you keep finding in the team that you love, they just can't get their crap together. That's what Discovery felt like. And then the last half of the season felt like, they're scrambling to try and salvage the game to at least save face, if not win, at least, get within striking distance. And it just, to me, it fell short. And then the pandering at the very, very, very end was even just, it's like, it's getting to a point where it's like, come on, you guys, quit lying to us here and tell us what you're really up to. And I'm sure we'll get into more on that as we get going into the program. But because there was so much stuff in Discovery I did want to like. I love Saru, great character. Tilly's another great character. Aspects of Lorca were good. Other than that, I can't really say anything good about the show. So I'll hand it over to Rob.
Well, I will say, okay, we'll start with the positive. There were a couple times it actually did almost feel like Star Trek. There were a couple of character moments, and I was like, wow, like, hey, this is almost good. And then
wait, you said almost good.
almost good. There was a scene. There was a couple scenes with
Rob's being nice.
Yeah, but there was this one scene in particular where Lorca, Culber, and Mikey Spock, as we call her, are in the sick bay, and I can't remember what the circumstance, but it was a genuine character moment where Lorca was actually showing concern for his crew, and I was like, hey, this is almost like Star Trek. But then they actually had to go and kill somebody like 10 seconds later. I was like, you couldn't let that last, could you?
Well, wait, was it the? I mean, we can spoil. I don't give it. Who cares at this point? You talking about when Culber gets his neck snapped?
I think so. Yeah, I think that was the episode. But there was this genuine, like I said, there was this genuine moment of character moment, and then Tyler Vach, as we call him, snaps Culber's neck. I was like, well, that didn't last long, did it? So, like I said, there were tiny little moments that you could point to. I'm like, okay, I can kind of get it, but it was just there was just like sprinkles on top of a very large sundae.
Wow.
I know we're trying to keep it PG.
No. The more you curse, the more work you make me do. But that's okay. Go right ahead.
Okay.
I noticed last time too, and that's why I'm trying to keep it PG.
Yeah.
I know I got a potty mouth, so
yeah.
No. The bleeps are funny, so please don't.
Yeah.
Not on my account. Go ahead. Well,
You can just add them randomly if you want to. That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah, well-
I could just do like Bill Cosby. See, you got the filth flarn and the filth and flarn the filth and then going to big black stuff and so.
the
But
big black stuff. I love it. No, listen. We did my crew and I. We did a rap show podcast about Discovery.
yeah,
And I wasn't. I think we all, Big Sexy Craig, please back me up or correct me if I'm wrong. I think we all tolerated the final episode. But
that's a good way of putting it.
But for
That's
me,
a far cry from where you guys were when we first. Because I mean, majority of you when we were last on the show were still on board Discovery. It seemed like, for the most part.
I want the guys to speak to themselves. They're being
Right.
there, but overall, I enjoyed the series because I guess I was so wanting something Trek that I could let some of the things that were bothering me slip. I just accepted it. Like the biggest thing were the Klingons. I'm like, okay, I can't do anything about it, but there was a scintilla of Trekness. Well, more than a scintilla. There was a lot of things about it that made me, reminiscent of Trek. And I liked it. And I got to tell you, this, you guys might come at me, but this series was the only series where I thoroughly enjoyed the mirror universe, where I didn't think that the mirror universe was just being played as a gimmick or being played for laughs or being played for, oh, look at my favorite character being a badass. It really felt like a fascist, oppressive society, and I did appreciate that. I appreciated that. The one thing I didn't like about it was that it seemed like, really, you guys are trying to do too much in one season, I mean, Big Sexy Craig,
Got to spend that Netflix money.
So, Big Sexy Craig, just briefly, remind us how you felt about the overall series, first season.
Someone mentioned earlier today that the show didn't feel like Star Trek. That's exactly right. It doesn't feel like Star Trek. I didn't think the mirror universe was called for in the first season. Mm-hmm. That's almost like throwing the Borg out there on this show,
I can
which
see that.
better not happen. I hated the Klingons. I hated the set designs. I hated the uniforms.
Okay.
I hated the fact that that Michael Burnham, who was guilty of mutiny,
here we go again,
may get her command status back. But again, at the same time, this is also the first season, so let's take what we have on the first season, see what worked, see what didn't work, and build off of those changes.
Craig, I forget. Did you like this? You liked the series overall? Did you like? What were your thoughts about the finale? I forget where you.
So you probably remember I complained obviously about the Klingons, the uniforms, the tech was too new. It didn't really feel like Star Trek, but the story elements were sometimes exciting to watch. And I kept hoping that the story would get to a point where they would explain why everything was so different.
Right.
Maybe it's another alternative universe. And I was just hoping that's how we would explain all of these differences. I loved seeing the Enterprise at the end of the season 1. However, I was disappointed that it wasn't the same Enterprise. It was a totally modernized, discoveryized version of it. So that was disappointing. So I was, I suppose, hoping the show would just get more Trek-like and enjoying the aspects that were good. But I didn't like the fact that it really wasn't complying with the original series, much like Enterprise never complied with the original series.
Which I must say, and I know Tom and Rob probably have something to say about this. I am watching Enterprise. I'm sitting down and I forced myself to watch it. I'm on the last season. And I got to tell you guys, I don't want to get too deep into it. It's not as bad as it's not even as close as.
I actually like Enterprise. I haven't seen the last 2 seasons, but I know how the show ends.
Don't tell me. I don't. I know it's a lot of.
I think it gets a bad rap, and as far as being away from Trek, Enterprise is closer than Star Trek Discovery is for sure.
I think that's a valid thing to say, and as a matter of fact, I'll go further. I think Enterprise is the closest show to having the spirit of the original series. I pick up on that.
I do see where you're coming from with that. Yeah, I there is aspects of that show that do harken back to the original series very well. There's other aspects that, you know, I can see where a lot of fans are like, no. You know, it's and that's where I was curious to hear how you guys have felt, because when we first talked to you, I think there was only a few episodes on at that point. And now that we've actually seen the whole season, I wanted to hear how you guys felt about it, because, yeah, I mean, we going into it, we kind of had an idea of where things were going. And I think even Rob and I gave the writers and showrunners a little bit too much credit as far as like the mirror universe and all that kind of stuff, like you guys brought up. You know, it's like, was it you, Michael, or Mark, who said that it tried too much at once?
Well, I said that I enjoyed this iteration or this version of the mirror universe, but I thought they could have saved it for another season.
Right, and that's the thing is, Rob and I pretty much had this idea that we were in the mirror universe the whole time, or it was going to lead to the mirror universe, and at some point we were going to find out the entire show was in a completely different universe than what we're used to. Well, not just the whole Prime thing that we're going to probably get into, but the whole fact of that they're going to try and sync it up with canon somehow.
Yeah.
And we figured we'd find out at some point they're going to be in an alternate universe where all the technology is in the same vein as the original 60 series or something like that. But we're not, we're like to the point where we're like, well, that's probably giving them way too much credit at this point.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I just was curious to see where you guys had come from. Because in the beginning, I remember at least most of you felt like it was doing a good job, or you were willing to give it a shot. But now it sounds like you guys have kind of come around and seen where Rob and I were apprehensive to begin with. Because
I wouldn't go that far. I would say I definitely see the flaws in Discovery, and of course, most of the flaws, and I think you guys can corroborate this with the excellent work you're doing on Midnight's Edge. That most of the flaws is strictly corporate suits and licensing.
Yeah.
And like you know, the end of the finale, at the end of the finale, I'm not gonna lie, the little hairs on my arm and the back of my neck went up when the black guy at the at comm says we're getting a signal, we're getting hailed. It's from it's a starship registry NCC 17, and I'm like, oh no, they're not. Are they gonna do it? Oh, awesome, they're doing it. But wait a minute, what the hell does that mean? What are they going to try to show me? They're not going to recast Spock. Didn't we say that, Craig? They're not going to recast classic characters. No, they're not going to do that. We got the ship, and we're going to get Pike. That's good. No, Ethan Peck? What?
And I seen somebody did a mock-up of him with the Spock eyebrows, ears, and haircut. It looks horrible.
But you brought up a thing though about the guy at Cons. The whole season 1. We always say that Star Trek is known for its characters.
I know where you're going. Go right ahead.
Great characters.
Go right ahead.
Name me one character other than Tyler Vach, Lorca, Saru, or Michael Burnham on the bridge crew.
I said the exact same thing. Thank you. Yes.
You can't. So I just, like, me and Tom, we had to make up names. There's the blue skin alien Nebula. There's Lisa Left Eye, the redhead. There's Mrs. T.
Who she's quite lovely on Twitter, by the way. We will say that about Lisa Left Eye. She's one of the few members of the cast who has been cordial with us.
Yeah, we got to give it. Emily Coates is the actress's name. We have to give it up to her. She's actually a great sport on Twitter. You know, she plays along with a lot of stuff. So that, you know, so we have to give it up to her. Mm-hmm. And you know, we'd like to give it up to her, giggity. But anyway, I have a thing for redheads. But anyway, like I said, there's Nebula, there's Lisa Left Eye, there's Mrs. T, LeBron James, and Not Sulu. Those are the names I gave to all of them. Well, you can guess which one Not Sulu is.
Wait a minute, Not Sulu. Oh my God.
the only guy. Asian character on the show besides Georgiou. Yeah.
I don't remember another Asian character. I guess that's
he's on the bridge. He's on the bridge.
I think
he's got like 2 lines the whole show, I think.
Well, I did remember. I think her name is she's clearly of African descent. She has elaborate hairstyle. Asuwakon, I think her name is.
Yeah. Which Tom actually calls her Mrs. T. So I mean, it's his name. So.
And the robot dude.
Yeah. Oh, the robot dude. Yeah. Well, we talk about the guy with just the robot head or the.
No, that's a female.
Yeah. Well, we
talk about the blue chick. We call her Nebula because she looks like Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah.
And the one from the Shenzhou we used to call Daft Punk. So.
Well,
so it's kind of a fun game though. You make up names for all the different side characters.
No wait, I got to ask you guys. Why is the black woman Mrs. T? She doesn't wear a lot of jewelry and shit.
I don't know that.
It was the hairstyle was very similar to the whole Mr. T thing. I think was the whole thing.
Okay.
And
that's just the name Tom came up with.
Because we had nothing better for her, unfortunately. She has nothing to do on the bridge
except say, "Which way, Captain?"
Yeah. What, Captain? Or Michael Burnham will save us. It's like.
But no, I agree with you 100%. One of the problems I had was that and I said this in a recent show, I believe, or maybe on another show, that the bridge crew was like the family that we in every Star Trek series, you knew who was at the helm. You knew who was the captain. You knew who was at ops. You knew who the first officer was. You knew who the science officer was. You knew who the doctor was. I mean, if nothing else, you knew the Kirk, Bones, and Spock versions in every show. I even know them in Enterprise, for God's sake.
But occasionally there'd be like a guy in the background that you'd see, but that was just a throwaway character. He wouldn't do much.
Or red shirts. Yeah.
Red shirt.
Thank you very much.
To quote your podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I will say, to be fair, I guess I settled into that. I was okay with it because it was a new version of Star Trek from a perspective I hadn't seen before. And so, as much as I was like, really? Okay, I'm going to go along with you. And it didn't, after a certain time, much like the whole series Enterprise, I'm finding myself saying, okay, fine. It doesn't bother me. You're giving me other stuff that makes up for that. And so it didn't bother me that much. But I'm just going to say here, and we're going to get into the crux of why we have convened here today on the USS Internet. I have a problem with recasting Spock. And you guys brought up, and it all made sense, this whole thing about Picard returning. Now, listen, TNG, and I say this all the time, you got to put aside original series because that stands above and beyond anything, okay? So with that caveat, TNG is my favorite Star Trek iteration, okay? Picard is my favorite captain, okay? I just smell fuckery bringing him back, what they're going to do with him. And you guys, I apologize, it was so detailed and intrinsic. What I took away from it, basically, was that bringing back Picard might be a way of placating some of the people who didn't appreciate the SJWism of Discovery. And also, they're trying to wipe out all of the Star Trek mythology that's gone before since 1966, the year I was born, by the way. And they're trying to just start from scratch by merging the Paramount licensing and the CBS licensing into one universe. Do I have that right? Is that basically
pretty much
a summation?
Pretty much. Yeah, because basically the quickest breakdown you can see is when Paramount or when Viacom and CBS split, it created 2 different Star Treks, basically. Right. You had the movies on one hand, which Paramount owned the distribution rights to and owned 100%. And then you had the actual television shows, which were acquired, I think, by Paramount. Am I right, Rob? Through Desilu back in the day?
Well, yeah. Desilu, Paramount. They acquired Desilu.
So up until 2005, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, they had the rights all under one roof. But then when Viacom split with CBS and created 2 new companies, all the television shows went under CBS.
Right.
So that means all of the entire TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, and so on, all were under that roof, and all the movies were underneath Paramount. So Paramount wanted to reinvigorate Star Trek once again. CBS had just ended Enterprise. It was kind of in dormant state. CBS licensed Paramount the rights to make new Star Trek, but the stipulations were that it had to be 25% different, at least, than the original series set. Okay, we'll call it that, the set of original series. So it could not be set in prime canon. They got around this by creating a new timeline, hence creating a more technologically advanced version of Star Trek in the end.
Right.
And the reason for this then was then they can create their own basic franchise, or however you want to put it, and create new toys, new licenses on everything else, toothbrush, toothpaste, all that kind of good stuff, soaps, whatever kids are into nowadays to get their favorite characters on. But basically then what that means is Paramount and Bad Robot get the licensing for the newer Trek stuff, but they don't get a dime off of anything from TOS, TNG, so on. So what happened then was, as the new shows were going on, the one stipulation that they had was CBS could not create a television show for the next 10 years within the prime timeline. So it not to compete with the Kelvin movies. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So basically when Discovery came along was mainly because the movies weren't doing so well, and CBS wanted to use something to kick off All Access.
Let me just ask you real quick. I just want to ask, we have an attorney on deck. Hold your thought just for a second, Tom. I want you to pick up. But so Big Sexy, what he's talking about, would that be the equivalent of like simply a non-compete clause where they couldn't do a show for 10 years?
Under my understanding, yeah, I'm sure that's what he's going to say, yeah. Because I think that's how it's even worded.
Yes and no. You don't want to violate that original trademark and copyright, so that's why they said, okay, you guys can do it, but it's got to be 25% different, and you can't have a piece of our merchandising. So they made it different. Their merchandising is lacking, to say the least. It's just not out there, and I don't want to get too far afield in the piece on YouTube, which we will get into, but yes, Q, to answer your question, yes, it is essentially a non-competition.
And the other thing that Tom, you guys brought out that I've just found fascinating, one of the reasons that I can make my own logical common sense argument why we didn't see any toys or anything like that for Discovery, because it was so different, no one would identify with it. But you guys blew my head open when you talk about how, what was it, Paramount just felt like, or CBS just felt like, what the hell is this? We're not going to put any toys out, but they're not going to sell.
Kind of. Well, just to kind of pick up where I left off, though, is that's where Discovery comes in.
Right.
So they were able to, they came up with a way of doing this so it wasn't a competing show, and that was have Bad Robot basically produce the show. And on paper now, it doesn't say Bad Robot anywhere, but you'll notice like Alex Kurtzman and Orsi and all these other people who were involved are still involved, and now Kurtzman's completely involved. And you can go in the Wayback Machine, and at one point Bad Robot was listed as a producer, and then it switched over to, what was Kurtzman's company called again, Rob?
Secret Hideout.
Yeah, so it's a very odd name. I mean, they have produced other stuff.
Secret how apropos. It's a secret hideout for Bad Robot. Really, think about it.
So then at one point, though, JJ and gang got very upset because, as you pointed out, the newer stuff just was lacking. The Kelvin products were not selling, but the original series stuff was. So JJ and company kindly asked if CBS would halt making any prime timeline merchandise for the time being so as not to compete with the Kelvinverse, and they in so many words said get bent. There's no way, because that generates $40 million worth of revenue every year, as to where your Kelvin timeline is not exactly working out the way we wanted it to, even though the first film was a huge success. And the second film, rightfully so, did very well financially as well. The third film, not so much, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more down the road. But so then what happened was you have two competing products on the market. And then when Discovery came around, it wasn't so much CBS didn't like it because they were actually behind it trying to promote it for CBS All Access. It was the toy companies that weren't behind it.
Right. Okay.
They came back and said, what do you expect us to do with this? Nobody's going to want this crap. You're basically trying to sell new Coke as old Coke, and nobody's buying it. What few products they did have come out were very niche, and they canceled.
It was a phaser.
A phaser. Oh, and their excuse was it conflicted with laws as far as toys and guns. But come on. It's a Star Trek phaser. It doesn't look anything like a real gun.
Right.
So that's, to me, just sounds like excuses. The few products out there besides the standard T-shirts and posters and all that kind of crap that, CBS pretty much gets produced on their own and doesn't have licensees come to them, that kind of stuff is available. The only licensed stuff that is really available right now that other companies have licensed outside of original Trek is the ships. And as far as I know, a lot of these are model companies where you have to order them MOD, made on demand or whatever, to where they're very expensive and they're not very popular. So, it's they don't have any figures, they don't have any standard ship models, they don't have anything that normally comes with a Star Trek series that we're used to seeing. And the reason is because these toy companies just kind of basically turn their nose up at them. And at this point, McFarlane seems like they're barely hanging on. And the only reason I think they're hanging on is because they're doing very well with the classic Trek stuff. So I don't know if Rob has anything to add to that.
No,
that's the whole breakdown. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say, what was it, like back in March, McFarlane announced this deal to produce Star Trek merchandise, and so far the only things we've gotten is based on TNG and the original series.
Yes, they have a very lifelike Picard and
I saw that.
Kirk's figure coming up this year, and that's it. Pretty much outside of the phaser, they got canceled. So,
well, you present two opposing sides. So you got the Kelvin films, you got what CBS is doing, and apparently, and this was surprising to me, you guys reported that things didn't go as well, or ratings. I don't know if you call them ratings when you're talking about CBS All Access, but it didn't perform as well as they were hoping. So that would intimate that you got people not liking Discovery, people kind of falling off on the Kelvin films, given the poor box office of the last one. Which actually, I of all of them, I kind of liked the last one the most. And I was surprised if you guys reported that Les Moonves, who's got his own problems right now, that he wasn't a sci-fi fan, and not to overstate this point, but he may have had a hand in kind of sabotaging anything Trek. That just blew my head open. So do you? I mean, I think I've got.
Well,
that
there
right.
is a famous story about Moonves.
Yeah.
We can't verify it per se, but the story goes they walked out. Him and his wife walked out of The Force Awakens and said, "Where's our check for that?" Because he literally does not know the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek.
Yeah. There's also I've heard his wife, who's Julie Chen, she hosts Big Brother. She actually said in an interview one time after they saw Wonder Woman, she said, "Oh, my husband Les, he ordinarily doesn't like movies like this, but he did enjoy Wonder Woman." Yeah, take that at face value, but Les he knows reality television, he knows sitcoms. He worked for Lorimar for years, which they did what, Dynasty, and I think
tons of stuff.
They did Dallas,
Dallas, and so he knows that aspect. He's a smart man.
I think they handled a lot of the TGIF shows as well. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he knows his thing, but the best analogy is that he's kind of like a coach who the game has kind of passed him by, and he's just he doesn't really know how to keep up with this, so he's got to trust.
Well, they're trying to get CBS out of that geriatric veil it has, like all the 60 minutes,
60 minutes, that kind of stuff.
They had success with shows like The Good Wife. That was CBS, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's a spin-off of that show.
Yes, All Access.
it all falls into place now. What you're saying, given where that network has tended to fall and has tended to see success. But now we're going to move into they're bringing back Patrick Stewart, which I can't. I'm not going to. Who's going to complain about that? No one's going to complain about that.
I certainly wouldn't complain.
I'd like them to bring Kirk back. Bring Shatner, please.
You know
I
what?
have ideas.
Why would you want to bring William Shatner back at this point?
Because he rules.
He indeed does rule.
I'm not going to argue with that, but I'm just afraid what they do with him at this point.
With Shatner?
Yeah, with any character. And that's where, like, we kind of put the brakes on, like, we're like, wait a minute, this Picard thing sounds great, but look who's behind it. And look what they're kind of telling us between the lines, and I'm sure that's what you want us to get to, but yeah.
Amen. That's where no one's going to say, oh no, Patrick Stewart's coming back. But what we're going to say is, oh no, you're going to ruin Patrick Stewart's return. That's what you're going to do. And that goes back to the question I asked you before. Do you think they're doing this to appease some of the people who didn't like some of the more progressive aspects of Star Trek and didn't like some of the changes?
Rob actually would probably be better at telling you the part as far as how CBS All Access works, because I know you kind of started into that and we didn't really cover that point, because it is important here.
Oh, yeah.
This whole thing is predicated on the selling of a streaming service that has nothing to offer, really. And that's kind of the whole point here. And they're going into the second season of Star Trek Discovery. They need something else to entice people on board, because that's the problem, is they've lost their core fans. Yeah. Because like Disney and some of these other corporations are starting to learn, hopefully, that you can't destroy the core fan base and hope that there's a brand new fan base that's going to be there to pick it up. You know?
Right.
One of the things I keep saying is, now you're about the same age as I am.
Referring to me?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
You don't look that old. Okay, I gotta tell you.
It's that with the.
I was surprised
it's
when
all
Rob
that
disclosed his age to me as well. So
I grew up in an Italian family. We ate a lot of pasta, so I'm a lot of olive oil. I'm very well hydrated. So anyway,
nice.
But
well rounded. Yeah.
Yeah, but you remember what a lot of the big CBS shows were when you were growing up, right? Right, you had All in the Family.
Oh yeah, classic.
MASH.
Yeah.
Newhart, the Bob Newhart Show, the Jeffersons.
Yep.
Well, basically until the Cosby Show, CBS was number one.
Yeah.
Like you had there was no competition. NBC and ABC were doing whatever they could to keep up, and then Fox came along, and then they're all just like, look at this little upstart thing. You know, it's like.
But I was saying about how all those classic series are nowhere to be found on CBS All Access. I mean, yeah, you have the Twilight Zone, you have the Odd Couple, which they bought the rights to later. I don't know how they did that, but you take a look at their,
because I think it's through Paramount. That would be another one that would be just like the CBS.
Yeah.
Well, also because a lot of the tone. Are you saying it has nothing to do with maybe the content either? Like All in the Family, I can't see that being placed anywhere today. It's a brilliant show.
It's just the point that he's getting at is that none of the classic CBS stuff that you really associate with CBS outside of a very few shows are actually on there. And that's because they were produced by other companies most of the time.
Okay. Sony right now owns the rights to All in the Family. Actually, you can find it for free on Crackle, believe it or not.
Right, and that's the other thing is with these Viacom, the buyouts, this, that, and the other. That's how Star Trek even wound up at CBS, because it originally was on NBC, right?
NBC,
that's right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And the reason for that is when the buyout of Desilu through Paramount, and then the separation. So these rights have been all over the damn place. But yeah, to get you back where you were, Rob, CBS All Access has really nothing to offer as far as
under their classics headings, they have Caroline in the City. Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Leah Thompson.
And in case you miss Big Bang on TBS, 7 times a day, they got that too.
Yeah, but they can't. They don't have every episode. That's the thing. They have the more recent ones. I'm not sure how far back their their library goes. And you could see the previous season.
And that's because it's a Warner Brothers show, and until a certain point, what Rob's bringing up is they didn't pay for the show until that point, and probably whatever ones they paid for, that's what they have on there.
Yeah. And you can see the last season of the most recent season of The Amazing Race, which I love The Amazing Race, but not enough for me to pay $9.99 a month to see it. But at the same time, like one of the things actually they've been doing is CBS, since they have a major stake in Showtime, they've been lumping the subscription numbers together. To sort of inflate the subscription numbers. So what's it called? Showtime Go, Tom? Showtime.
No, that's HBO. But regardless,
Showtime Anytime, I think, is the platform.
Yeah, they had what was it? 2.5 whatever million subscribers, and only like 250,000 of those were actually CBS All Access.
Yeah. And they were projecting internal numbers were projecting to get the subscription numbers up to over 4 million.
Well, yeah, what was all that stuff we were hearing about 10 million subscribers on CBS All Access because of one would assume that was due to the nature of the uniqueness of Star Trek Discovery and the fan base. So was that all kind of a sham?
They never had that many subscribers, not even close.
No.
Wow.
There was this thing called Parrot Analytics that's out there, and they do a lot of the rating stuff, kind of like Nielsen, but it's for the internet. And instead of actually releasing the numbers of actual views, like, because Netflix up until recently has not released their actual view numbers. I think under some new deal now they're going to have to, or they are going to start. But CBS All Access has not released any actual numbers. They keep claiming it's a success, and they did such great this and that and the other, and they had record signups for CBS All Access. But what they're not telling you is the actual number of people showing up and watching the show, and how many people canceled after their first free subscription.
Right.
And the number that we have, basically, I think at this point, Rob and I think we sat down and we're being generous, is that they started at 250,000 and they've been able to retain about that much. So they're probably sitting around 500,000 subscribers. Yeah. And we're being generous. Now, and we're going by what's out there, because Parrot Analytics, go ahead, Rob, you're a little bit better explaining this.
Yeah,
the whole Parrot Analytics thing.
Parrot Analytics is a BS metric. What they are measuring is something called demand expressions, which means they look on the internet for certain keywords and they measure those, the instances of those. They had measured at some point 58 million what they call demand expressions for Star Trek Discovery. That is 58 million instances in internet traffic that Star Trek Discovery is mentioned. It could be Star Trek Discovery sucks. F you, Star Trek Discovery blows. What do you know? Yeah, it could be, well, what do you know?
The equivalent of trending on Twitter.
Yeah. But anyway, they've been touting out these demand expression numbers, and they say, 58 million demand expressions as if they're ratings. I'm like, there's not 58 million people watching Star Trek Discovery. There's not even 58 million people subscribed to Netflix, at least not in the U.S. I mean, there's about maybe 100 million worldwide, and I think 52 million of those are subscribed in the U.S.
And I think their numbers are actually a little down now. I think they're down in the 47 million is last I knew.
But that's where this Picard series comes in as sort of we've been calling it the CBS apology tour, and that they're just looking in the Star Trek stable. People like Picard. People still love they love Picard, and everybody gets a warm fuzzy when they think of Jean-Luc Picard. Let's bring him back, but they
can't mount a series. Listen, the listeners are going to call me ageist, but I'm just being real about this. You cannot launch a series and have the focal point of the series being an 80-year-old man. He has to be like off in the periphery, or he has to be Charlie of Charlie's Angels, if you will.
Well, we've kind of took this into consideration, and we have some theories on this. We did some digging, and the exact same day that Patrick Stewart announced and confirmed that he was going to come back as Picard, trademark was registered for the name Star Trek Reliant. Yeah. Now, most people, when they hear that, they think about Star Trek Wrath of Khan, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, it's little known, because it was in a deleted scene and it's in novels, that for a short time, Jean-Luc Picard did serve on a ship called the Reliant. It was not the same Reliant, but the next next rendition of it.
NCC 1801A or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you real quick. Let me just ask you real quick. Was this ever referenced in any of the TNG episodes?
Yes, but it was deleted. So
Oh.
it's been reinstated as far as I know. I don't know exactly. I don't have the TNG box set. So I can't tell you if you can just watch it and it's there, or you have to actually set it up to watch it. But there's a scene where he's talking about where he served, and he mentions serving on the Reliant. Now, this could be completely unrelated, or if it is related, what I see is Picard sitting in a seat and telling us the story of his first adventures on the Reliant. So we'll have young Picard and old Picard. That's my guess, because it's a limited series. That's another thing some people aren't catching, is all these series that are being announced are limited.
That's right.
None of them to this point outside of Discovery are expected to be an ongoing series. Now, that isn't to say that if Picard isn't a huge hit, they aren't able to extend it. That option's always open. But at this moment in time, as far as we know, it's meant to just be a limited series, and we have no real information other than that. And we're just putting that together. That needs to be expressed. That's all just us putting that together. Now, at the same time, there's also been an announcement for a Starfleet Academy show.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
It could very well be that he's the admiral or the commandant of Starfleet.
Right.
And he's kind of more of a peripheral character, but like we see the cadets through his eyes kind of thing. I don't know. That's the two possibilities we come up with, unless Rob has another one.
Well, the only other thing is that there's also a second trademark registered, Star Trek Destiny. We have no idea how that fits into this.
See, to me, that sounds like that might be that animated series, because there's another series. There's the other series announced was an animated series.
Yes.
So
interesting. Oh my God. See, we're getting scoops here, people. This is amazing. So,
because Star Trek Destiny sounds to me like it's going to be like, and I have nothing to go on with this, but I have a feeling, being that it's animated, it's going to be like a young Kirk or something like that.
Kind of like there's a new comic book out called Star Trek To Boldly Go, and it's like all of the original series characters as teens.
And that's what I'm thinking, is it's going to be something like that, like a Kirk, because the name Destiny screams.
Yeah.
It's going to be about some captain as they...
Star Trek 90210.
I'm sorry, hold on. Teen Star Trek?
Well, that comic book, the Star Trek To Boldly Go, we talked about it, and it looks ridiculous. Let me ask you now, here's where... This is all so heady right now, but there's this... One of the series is being touted about involving, and please tell me that you've heard differently, that they're going to do a series about the a prequel to Wrath of Khan.
Well, this is something that's actually come out a while ago, and this was the Nicholas Myers series. And we're trying to get more information on this. We've been working on this since it came out to try and get some kind of confirmation on this or what it's about. And the most that we have on this is that in some interview, Nicholas Myers said he cannot possibly comment on that at this time, with cannot being like Khan. And
oh God.
So the feeling is that it's very possible that the Nicholas Khan miniseries is going to be a
Nicholas
prequel. Nicholas Meyer. Let me say that again. It's very possible that the Nicholas Meyer series is most likely a Khan prequel. Yeah.
I mean,
probably
where does that take place? What period of time?
We don't know. See, that's just it. It could be before, during the eugenic wars. It could be him on, the desert planet.
City Alpha 5.
Who cares about that?
Exactly.
What that series is, and Craig and I have joked about this. It'll be them playing checkers with that.
Well, I think they've actually attempted the story twice in comic book form of what Khan went through, like with the death of his wife and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there is stuff there that could very possibly be done, but the only hope I have for it is the fact that Nicholas Myers is involved. That's it. It's like, because this guy does understand that even though he was never a huge Trek fan to begin with, he got the concept and he knew what the audience wanted. That's why Star Trek II and Star Trek VI are so, well regarded. But it's just, it could be something else completely too. We don't know. But just considering what he said, it's a good possibility. And being that, he was the director of Wrath of Khan. I guess if there's anybody who's going to tell that story, it'd be him.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. But I just want to throw two things at you guys. Two last things at you guys. One, tell me, or give me your opinion. I don't see how this is going to unite these universes, because I got a sense that was the gravamen of your entire video, that they're trying to merge these two together somehow. And
well, the crutch is everybody's laboring under the idea that canon and Prime are the same thing. And we would normally, that'd be the right thing, right? Well, to them, Prime isn't what we consider Prime. What they consider Prime is the Kelvin timeline.
Wow.
And so we're under the impression, I got to stress that, we're under the impression that at some point we're going to realize when they refer to canon and Prime, they're talking about Star Trek Kelvin timeline, because that's the timeline they have to be in regardless.
But wouldn't they know the difference? Because they made the point.
They do.
In two films, they had Leonard Nimoy playing Spock, and they had Zachary, I don't know how you pronounce it. Is it Quinto or Quinto?
Quinto, I think it is.
Quinto. So they had to have known they had to know the distinction. They couldn't have been confused about that.
Well, right. It's just a simple matter of, again, everything was different enough that they were able to get away with it. Kind of thing. And at this point, what we're going to, like I said, we have a feeling that at some point we're going to find out and realize, well, they meant that all the time. And then they're going to say, oh, what did you guys think we meant? Kind of thing. It's like, oh, you thought we meant that old stuff? Ha 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 ha. Of course not. That's not Star Trek anymore.
The term is gaslighting. The term is gaslighting.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, man. And, I was thinking about going back to the Wrath of Khan prequel. If they do the eugenics wars, that'll be tiresome, too, because, I don't know. I think, Tom, you said you've seen Enterprise. If you only saw the first two seasons, you would know this, but they devoted a whole 3 or 4-parter to a progenitor of Khan Noonien Soong, who was played by Brent Spiner, who commandeers a whole group of, what are they called?
Augments.
Augments,
yeah.
It's kind
of
like,
seen that one yet.
Yeah, just imagine, remember the TNG episode Descent, where Lore commands the fealty of this rogue Borg troop?
Surprisingly, yes.
It's the same setup. And he's being played by the leader, being played by Brent Spiner. So anything in that, I'm not interested. Anything having to do with Khan at this point, I'm not interested in. But but the other thing I wanted to ask you guys, and I'm going to put this out to Big Sexy and Craig as well. What's the end game here? What do you see as the end game? And how do Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth leaving? Which I got to be honest with you, I think that's possibly the best thing that could have happened. To force these guys to look at what they got and do something with it, and make some hay out of this. What's the end game to all of this? It seems like everything's in disarray right now.
It seems like the end game is to, in no uncertain terms, to overwrite the original series, to make that this is the only Star Trek that is available, so that way they're
I wouldn't say available, but this is the timeline now to where,
the
kids don't have to get into all that old pesky stuff. They don't have to deal with that. Then they can just get into this fresh.
You don't have to know who Kirk or McCoy or Spock is. You can just like this, it's sort of like an easy way to jump on board this property that they have that has been around for 50 years without the baggage of the previous series. They don't want to.
And that's the big thing right there. That's the key thing right there. And that's the big thing in the writer's room, because that's all that the Star Trek, they've got a group in there that know all the Star Trek stuff. The only reason they're there is to make sure that the writers don't do something that was the same story before. They're not there for continuity reasons. They're not there to say, oh, that would never happen, or that doesn't belong there, or anything like that. They're just there to say, okay, yeah, they've never done a story like that before.
But it seems like all they ever do is cannibalize better episodes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rob, but that is an important point.
That's fine. And they don't and it's probably the same reason why they don't have any experienced Star Trek writers on the show. They did have a couple. Jonathan Frakes is obviously experienced with Star Trek, but a lot of people have been saying, why don't they bring in somebody like Roxanne Dawson? Why don't they bring in Robert Duncan McNeil? I said because these people have enough. They have enough gravitas and they have enough experience within that universe, within that realm of storytelling, to be able to say, no, this isn't how it would go. It would be like this. So they really don't want anyone to be able to step on what they're doing.
They would have to unlearn what they have learned, to quote another franchise. They want them to fall into place with what they want them to do. And these guys are veterans, like you're saying. That's what I'm hearing you saying. I mean, Craig, Big Sexy. These guys are suggesting that they might be trying to tell you to forget about Kirk, Bones, and Spock. Well, not Spock.
Well, not so much them, but just forget about the older versions. Just remember the new. Is kind of more so, yeah.
And the new sucks.
I don't want to forget about William Shatner. I got to tell you.
It's not going to happen. It cannot happen.
No, I don't believe it's going to happen.
Well, not so much forget about it, is that to make it so that you don't have to really know about it.
Yeah.
It's just so that you can just pick up with the Kelvin movies, with Discovery, and just jump on board. The best analog I can actually make is probably to Doctor Who, is what they did there. When they rebooted that series, and I think was it 2005 or 2006?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, where they had new Doctor, new stories. You know, they would make references,
or like the New 52 and all that kind of stuff. When you just got to kind of reboot stuff, you know, it's kind of in that vein, yeah.
And the New 52 sucked.
And here's the thing I think that really stands out, and this is something we pointed out in our newest video, which is about the Hemsworth and Pine situation.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. Yeah.
I think the most telling thing in all this is that when Simon Pegg said that they rejected Orci, I don't know how you pronounce his name, script for Star Trek 3, or the third Kelvin movie, because it was too Star Trekky.
Wait. Repeat that, please. Repeat that. Say that again.
They rejected the Orci script for Star Trek 3, the Kelvin movie, Star Trek 3, because it was too Star Trekky. Like I said, let that sink in for a moment and think about that. What they're saying is, okay, this franchise, it's been associated with nerds for too long. And everything that nerds love about it, we need to get rid of. Why? Because otherwise these hip kids nowadays are not going to sit through boring diatribes from a British guy, you know, who's asking for Earl Grey hot, you know, or something like that. You know, they're not going to listen to that shit. They don't want to. What they want is bam, boom, flash, in your face, Bayisms, constant explosions.
I think I just threw up in my throat.
And so this is where the contention comes in with Discovery, because it's like a complete amalgamation of all these things, and all the people who sit there and try to find ways to justify its existence and what it stands for. They just want to seem to ignore all this other stuff. And they'll come out and call us liars, and they'll say we're just trying to stir up, you know, controversy and whatnot. But it's like the stuff's out there. We didn't make this up. It's out there, you know.
Another good one is we're gatekeepers. Oh, you're gatekeepers. We're keeping people from liking Star Trek. I'm not keeping anybody from liking Star Trek. You want to like Star Trek? Go ahead, fine, like it. You don't want to like it.
Want people to like it for the wrong reasons.
But now, why don't they just, why doesn't Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams, he's had the integrity with Star Wars. They haven't trampled on the historic Star Wars in making the new movies. No, seriously. I mean, they brought back characters. They're going to bring back more characters.
Well, up until The Last Jedi, I would agree with you. But J.J. had nothing to do. And if anything, that movie's in despite of. Here's the thing. J.J. was never a Star Trek fan. He did this because they asked him to, and they wanted him to Star Wars it up.
Yeah.
And that's why he was brought on board. And then that infamous meeting we brought up before, he was the one who said, why are we doing this? Why are you guys creating this other stuff when all we're doing is competing with ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
if you guys want me to do this, then let me do this. And they're like, well, we can't because your shit's not selling and we're not stopping this other stuff. There's no way, because this is the only revenue we have right now, basically, because Paramount's in dire straits.
Yeah.
I mean, for a while, it seemed like Sony was going to go belly up, but everybody wasn't paying attention to how bad Paramount was doing.
Paramount is something like $10 billion in the red. They say it might be even closer to $15 billion. And
what?
Sherry Red's, yeah. They've got a lot of red ink on their hands, and Sherry Redstone's been.
They haven't had a hit in.
Well, they had a pretty good hit with Mission Impossible.
I was going to say
that's the only thing they've had lately. That's it. But
Yeah.
when was the last one?
Yeah. I mean, but the other thing is too is that Sherry Redstone, she's running Viacom for the old man, Sumner Redstone.
right.
They've been trying to put the squeeze on Les Moonves. Now, this is his baby, Star Trek Discovery. This whole Star Trek thing is Les Moonves' baby. He's the guy who's been pretty much been saying, do this, do X, Y, and Z. I want this, that, and the other thing. Sherry Redstone wants, if this merger goes through, a guy by the name of Bob Backish to run the whole show, which would leave Les Moonves out in the cold. Now, this is I'm not going to say this is why it's happening, but it seems very convenient that now, with all these, that the time of the fiscal quarter ending and everything, and then at the negotiations heating up, we start to hear Les Moonves and accusations of sexual misconduct and sexual impropriety and bullying and hostile work environment. I mean, it just seems like I don't want to wish any ill upon anybody like that, but to me it would seem Star Trek would benefit more under Sherry Redstone, because the property was very good to her and her family for a very long time.
Right.
And I think the last thing she would want to say is she would want to see is it dragged through. Like, hey, we got this thing, we did well with it before. Find somebody who knows something about Star Trek to work on this. You guys are out.
How hard is that?
Yeah.
I think any of us could go up there and say, hey, this is what you need to do.
But they don't want us to do that. They don't want somebody to do that. They want somebody to JJ it.
And,
they want somebody to come in and jazz it up and make it for the kids. And that gets back around to the whole Pine Hemsworth thing. And they got paid a lot of money to do Star Trek 3.
One of the other things, though, too, is we have there's another person who joins us on our live streams, Random Game User 42. I don't know if you ever heard her on our.
I've seen him connecting.
Well,
with you
it's
guys,
her. So
I'm sorry.
She's the Robin Quivers to our Howard and Fred. So
nice.
But anyway, she brought up a very good point. Have you noticed, though, that this Star Trek really doesn't require you to pay a whole lot of attention to it?
No.
I mean, this isn't for people. This version of Star Trek isn't for people who watch television. It's for people who stare at their phones, and then you'll hear an explosion or you'll see a flash. Oh, it's time to look up and see what's happening.
You know, you're so right. You're so right about that. Because with Star Trek, when I think of Star Trek, that I don't know how to put it into words, but hopefully Big Sexy and Craig know what I'm talking about. But there are no rules anymore with this new Star Trek. There's no, like the bridge crew is family. You know, there's a certain there's a mythology with Star Trek that spawned technical manuals and dictionaries and
that's what they want to avoid. They don't want any of that. They see Star Trek as something that's too cerebral.
But do they? I'm sorry. I'm starting to get passionate here.
No, it's fine.
Do they understand that if not for Star Trek, you wouldn't have a space shuttle called the Enterprise? You wouldn't have Mae Jemison. You wouldn't have big screen TVs, possibly. You wouldn't have flip phones.
That's
Star Trek is more than just Star Trek. It was a pool of ideas. It was a incubation farm of ideas that became real.
It was a window into the future, really.
And really, you're talking about people who really just don't care. That's not what they care about. What they care about is selling CBS All Access and replacing what they see as a dying fan base. And unfortunately, they like with Star Wars and a few other fan bases that, you know, we've been involved with at Midnight's Edge and, you know, have played our parts in, is, you know, they just don't care. What you love about something isn't what they're there about. They're there to sell what you love to the biggest audience possible. And however they got to do that, they're going to do it.
But the other thing is too that this audience that they think exists hasn't shown up. This audience, and we see what we saw with The Last Jedi.
Well, and Andre brings up a good point with this, with Star Wars, and he says the same thing. The thing is these new audiences that you're trying to bring to this don't have an investment in this like the core fan base does. So it's disposable for them. And the new thing on the block to them is like the Marvel movies and stuff like that. Star Wars is just that stuff that their parents watch.
So do you think, I want to end on a positive note, because I got to be honest with you guys. The last show that you guys appeared on, I mean, it was a record for us. I'm not going to lie. But boy, it was also a record in negative comments.
We tend to do that to people.
We have, when we cross over, it happens.
People, you get us. There's a lot of comments to saying that. Oh, I like the show except for that autistic guy. What, me? Huh? What do you have something to say?
It doesn't help that I'm usually a little bit more laid back and subdued.
But no, I mean, listen. The thing is that I felt like on that last show where we reviewed the season premiere of Discovery last season, I thought we gave a very balanced review. You guys didn't like it. I liked it. I was willing to sign on to it. Big Sexy and Craig were willing to go with it. I think we were balanced, and everyone gave legitimate evidence as to why they felt they did. Boy, the comments were like, "Oh, you guys are haters. You guys." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So I do kind of. I'm not trying to placate. I'm not trying to be the Star Trek producers now and placate this younger audience. But I want to end on a positive note. Do you think that, and just briefly, do you think that Hemsworth and Pine leaving, maybe, you got to tear it down and build it up, which is what they're doing. And maybe we'll see, I don't know why I'm asking this question. I already know the answer. Do you think we'll see a Star Trek that we will prefer? I know we're not going to. I don't know why I'm even asking the question.
Mm-hmm. Well, it needs to be said, the only reason that Pine and Hemsworth aren't coming back,
because of money.
As I was going to say earlier when we were talking about it, Paramount overextended themselves with Beyond. They gave the cast way too much money, and within the contract, then they promised them somewhere above or in the range of $6 million. That's as best as we can find out. Well, that number is no longer on the table, hence that's why Pine walked away. Hemsworth was a big linchpin in the script that they want to use. Mm-hmm. Because they want to do a time travel story to where Kirk gets to meet his father. That's the whole reason for bringing Thor back. And, of course, it's a selling point to all these investors. And that's where this Tarantino business comes in, too. I mean, we can't, this is like rumor kind of stuff. But it's true. It's true. It's the evidence is there, is that they're trying to get people on board because Paramount doesn't have the money to pay for this stuff anymore. They need to get other investors involved and entice them.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if you agree. I don't know if Big Sexy or Craig, you agree. I just think that was an example of them not adjusting to a post-MCU world and thinking that the budgets that they were putting out for Star Trek were still going to be sufficient. And when you want to bring on the guy, and you put him in a black hat, or you put him in 12 Strong or something like that, you put Chris Hemsworth in one of these films, maybe they'll flop, but you put him in anything geek-related. This guy played Thor for how many films? He just appeared in Ragnarok, which made close to $1 billion. You put him in anything geek-related, and his stock goes up, and he's going to want more money. I just think these guys...
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is Orsi's the one who came up with this script. They kept this one, but rejected the other one. Yeah. Because it had Thor in it. And that's your point right there, is what it's getting to.
Right. Yeah.
And they have a director right now. They've announced a director. Someone by the name of S.J. Clarkson. Now, if you don't know that name.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. She directed...
TV direct? What did she direct?
She's directed some episodes of The Defenders, Jessica Jones.
Right.
And the UK version of Life on Mars. And that actually deals with time travel. Okay. So I can hear the jokes now, SJW Clarkson. I'm like, just leave that alone, okay? Just whatever.
Yeah, her resume sounds solid to me.
Yeah, she has a pretty good resume. I'm like, I'm all for bringing in new people as and seeing what they can do. You give them.
But they have to have better credits than the Gilmore Girls.
Yes, exactly. That's the big problem. Gilmore Girls level writers we have on Star Trek Discovery. Yeah. I actually tweeted at the guy who wrote was it the Harry Mudd episode? A guy by the name of Josh Nardino. He was a writer on the Gilmore Girls, and people were patting him on the back on Twitter and says, "Oh, great job." I'm like, I tweeted at him, "What the did I just watch?" I'm like, how can you say this is good?
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I mean, it was a head trippy episode, but too many plot holes in it. That sunk it for me.
Yeah, but that brings us to another problem with Discovery and with this whole new universe is that they say they want to do something new, but they are bringing back little bits and pieces as if to say, "Ha, look, you recognize that? Oh, yep. Harry Mudd, you must know who he is."
Yeah.
And now they're adjusting.
Yeah, and they don't really follow through on a lot of things either.
Because now, if you notice from the trailer of season 2, you get a lot of Orville vibe there.
Well, you know how I feel about the Orville.
Yeah. the elevator bit was actually
a very Orville-esque.
You're right. Yeah, you know what, guys, you're right. And my red shirt tried to tell me that. Craig, Big Sexy, I apologize. You tried to tell me that.
The Orville is good.
Yeah, and I see that. I didn't see it in that last episode, but now that you guys put a spotlight on it, that's totally.
And what I was getting around to here is, like, sooner or later, you know, it's proven that you can do Star Trek in a different way and it still be Star Trek, and Orville is the proof. Whether you like the show or not, for what it stands for, it is a loving tribute to Star Trek.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Do you think the Orville is going to supplant Trek with all this madness going on?
It already has.
I mean,
I'll be honest with you.
Do you guys agree that the Orville is basically the Next Generation? That's that series, right?
Yes. Yeah. It really is. I mean,
it's the logical extension, but it's the blue collar version. You actually get to see the toilet.
Right.
They allow people to still be human beings, and even in the 23rd century,
you get to see what's happening when they're not trekking.
Yeah, I mean, they play practical jokes on each other. They sing karaoke.
Like the best line that really defines the show is when Scott Grimes' character is like, "We're not getting out of here by 5 today." You know, it's like this is what they do for a job. It's and that's the stuff that Discovery is missing. Is the stuff that Generations and all the other shows were so great for, was that we got to see what these people were like, not just at their best, but when they were just being people. Yeah. And Mikey Spock is not a person.
Mikey Spock is she's a plank of wood.
Person. These characters aren't characters. They're just placements for what needs to be. And if God forbid they even have some moments of humanity, like Rob brought up before, is like, as soon as you think you're going to get to know these characters a little bit, oh no, that's too much of a slow moment. We got to have some explosions now, or death. And we're dragging the show out very far. Sorry about that.
I just don't know. I guess I can see where how you feel that way, but I think they made it up with. I thought they gave Burnham a lot of backstory with her on Vulcan and failing
to a point. But our problem with Mikey Spock is that she is a character to where either she's positioned to where she's the only one who can save the day, and then you have everybody. And if she's not the one there saving the day or telling everybody what they should be doing or should be acting like, somebody's talking about her and saying she's the only one that can do it, or good thing you were there, Mikey, or nobody else would have been alive. It's like it's every scenario in the show is a setup for Mikey Spock to be the hero in some way, shape, or form, no matter how unnatural it seems or feels.
The one character I do, the only other character we do like is Tilly, and as a friend of ours says, bless her big boobed heart. She's one of the few characters that actually is like a Star Trek character. Yeah, they actually allow her to be a human being. You can the Stamets character, he's almost there, but not really. They keep yanking him back to that sort of uptight stick of his ass.
Right.
Well,
he's the Niles Crane. Yeah. He's the Niles Crane of.
Well, not only that, he's too much of a pawn in what they need the story to do. Unfortunately,
I'd say that's more Culber. I'd say
Well, that
Culber's
too. Both. I mean, that's the thing is all these characters are generally just like placements, and that's what brings it back to Rob's RLM test of the crew is like name somebody in the crew, and not only name somebody in the crew, more importantly, name something about them that is not related to their job. You know, and
basically what you're saying is, and I think this is what I'm getting is that, and I would agree with you. I just didn't have a problem with it. Was that Discovery was more plot driven than character driving plot, if that makes sense.
to a point, yes, but at the same time, and that brings me back to the whole New Coke thing, or however you want to put it. Regardless of what you're trying to do, you're still trying to pull the switcheroo on the audience, and you're saying it's Trek, but is it really? When the parody show that's on right now is more Trek than what supposedly is Trek, and that's the thing that I think is the linchpin for a lot of the fan base, and. Whether, there's a few, people here and there who are always going to defend Star Trek no matter what. And we run into that all the time. But basically you have to turn around and look at it and go, no matter how you dress up a turd, you can put sprinkles on it. You can put a bow on it.
He said turd.
And put Star Trek on it as a label. It's still a turd underneath, no matter what you put on it that's fancy to make you think otherwise. And I'm not trying to say, I hate saying that, but it's not like we want to hate Star Trek.
No. Yeah. Another point we keep bringing up is there's a certain number of people that are saying, if we don't support this, then we're not going to get another Star Trek. No, we are going to get another Star Trek at some point. It's one of those properties that is evergreen. You can pull something new out of it.
Yeah, it's basically like saying that, what was it, the McLean Deluxe?
Yeah,
that McDonald's had that was a big horrible disaster. It would be like saying if you don't go buy a McLean Deluxe right now, we're never going to have McDonald's again, ever. Get out there and buy one now, or we're going to lose McDonald's forever.
Well, wait, we did lose the McRib, didn't we?
No, it's a seasonal thing, and they do it on purpose. They create
demand.
I was totally joking.
Demand. But
totally
it's okay, good. But no, it's just the point is like, God forbid. You dislike something somebody brings out, maybe they actually will try harder to give you something you want. Why do you think we're getting a Picard series? Why do you think Star Trek Discovery is going to start feeling more probably like Star Trek?
Do you think that there will be a season 3 of Discovery? To me, and after listening to your video, watching your video, all indications point to no.
No, probably not. I doubt it. Because the other thing is the license is going to be coming up within the middle of this. So then technically CBS, for all intent and purpose, could just turn around and start doing things in canon again.
Okay. All right.
As far as I know, unless it's been extended because of Beyond, I'd have to check into that unless Rob knows better than me.
No,
because the original deal was for 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and we'd be coming up on that in 2019 if you consider the release of 2009 if that's when the 10 years starts, which I'm assuming.
Okay.
I happen to think it's right now. I think it hinges on whether or not this CBS Viacom merger goes through.
That's a big deal because Moonves is pretty much out the door. We know that. I mean, the only reason he's there is because of money, and we don't have the time to get into it all. But yeah.
But don't feel bad for Les Moonves. If he goes, he gets $180 million.
The golden parachute is a beautiful.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. Is that's the only reason he's still there.
Right.
Is because they're doing this investigation. Because if they can get rid of him with just cause, they don't have to pay him out. But if he leaves and there's no real just cause, because he's going to leave, I guarantee he's going to leave. But if they can't find enough reason for him to be fired or whatever, he can leave and keep the money. That's what Rob's getting at, basically. Yeah. It's my understanding.
I guess he and Kathleen Kennedy can commiserate over some schnapps or something. Do you ever? Let me ask you this, and I know I keep extending this, but you guys are like factoids, man.
No, that's fine. I got time. So
do you ever see? Is there ever a circumstance where we get rid of the CBS All Access? And by the way, I wanted to point this out. Big Sexy, he made an excellent observation where when we get these four new series, they're going to stagger them so that we will be obligated to keep CBS All Access throughout the year. We won't dump it when we.
That's what I was getting at before, because you got to remember all these people that signed up before, they used their free month and then they tried to cancel, and then CBS All Access tried to do everything they can to retain customers, and as best we can figure, they maybe retained a small percentage, a very small percentage.
But
and
do you see them still maintaining the CBS All Access, or do they say, okay, it, that was a failure, let's just put it back on CBS?
As long as Moonves is around, they're going to keep it to save face. It's not going to. It might get soaked up into something else eventually. But here's the thing that we haven't really brought up and is important to note. Only half of the season 2 is done. Netflix pretty much footed the bill for season 1.
Right.
They did not for season 2 for the specific reasons we're talking about. And this is something that even those who want to be in denial can't really deny anymore, is that Netflix did not consider this a hit, or they would be footing the bill for season 2.
But what's amazing about that, I did want to raise that. That was one of the things you guys pointed out that I was not completely aware of. But you look at that trailer, it looks like CBS said, we're gonna put more money into this.
They did. They sunk a lot of money into this.
What's like $10 million an episode?
Something to that. That's
$10 million an episode. That's insane.
Yeah, and that's what they basically. Well, they started with the intention to spend $10 million per episode for last season, but in the end, I think they spent 7 or 8 per episode, and then they ended up splitting the one episode, not the last episode, but like what was it, the next two last episodes, because there's the one episode that's only like 35 minutes. Yeah, that's first half, or that's either the first half or last half of one of the other episodes.
The Pavo one, the one that was almost. It started out almost kind of like This Side of Paradise, and then it ended with Saru, tripping out, and
that was so they could get another episode in there. Because here's the whole thing about how these streaming services work, real quick. Basically, when they license all this other stuff, if you watch Star Wars: The Force Awakens on Netflix, they have to give Disney a certain percentage there for that view, right? If you watch something that's a Netflix original, they get to keep that money.
Of course.
CBS All Access works the same way.
Right.
Now, the first season was basically a loss leader for Netflix's part, and on CBS's part, they were basically just pure profit, baby. This time around, it's not pure profit, baby, and the investors and the board is going to want this to perform. And if season 2 does not perform the way they expect it to, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a quick wrap-up in the last half and just to finish it off. Because if season 2 is not a success, I have a feeling we're done with Discovery. They're going to rely. That's where this Picard stuff comes in, all this other stuff. They got other stuff lined up in preparation for Discovery to fail, basically. And so, I mean, this is just my kind of observation on the whole thing. I don't know if Rob has a different take on it, but
no, really, it's pretty much the same sentiment as you. I mean, yeah, they are anticipating Star Trek Discovery to fail, but they are prepared if it does. That's probably the best way to put it.
Well, what can I say? My head is swimming. I mean, so much stuff. Before we close shop, Big Sexy Craig, do you have any final words about any of this? This is really heady stuff here.
I thought in the piece on YouTube, they showed the still picture of Brian Fuller.
Oh, here we go.
You know where I'm going.
Yes.
He's wearing a Star Wars jacket. He's wearing a Star Wars jacket, doing the Vulcan, hand.
Well, and to defend Brian Fuller real quick, the reason he supposedly walked away, or in terms we've more kind of found got fired, was because he kept trying to make the show more like Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the whole Star Wars bit was more of a joke, but no, I know what you're talking about, Mark. Yeah, he did that at a con. That's what that's from, I believe.
Craig, you got any last words on this?
All of what has been said makes sense. I understand the licensing problems, the reasons why the shows have gone the way they have. I'm holding out hope that it doesn't get rid of the original timeline. I think there's too much history there. If they want to appease Star Trek fans by bringing back Picard, they need to also bring back Kirk. And I'm all on board for watching William Shatner come back and do his own show. That's all I can say about that.
Wow. Well, listen, before we leave, because I'm not ready to take the heat from all of the because we post this show on YouTube as well as iTunes. we're going to go around the horn, and we're all going to say in a sentence or 2 sentences or less a positive thing about Star Trek in the state that it's in now. Okay, and I'm gonna start with my guest. I'm gonna start with Rob. Go, Rob.
Well, I always remember there's from the end of the Muppet Show, there was a moment from Waldorf and Statler when he said, "Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens. What? It ends." Oh!
I gave him a shot. Hey, Rob, you're out there on your own, man. Okay. All right, Tom, go.
Oh, he's fearless. He's fearless. He don't care. Positive. I guess the only positive could be is if Star Trek 4 doesn't happen, and my feelings on how the breakdown of the rights are, hopefully within a year or two, they can kind of get things back on track in the Picard series. If it's handled well, is a good thing. Unfortunately, I can't say much for Kurtzman being in charge for the next 5 years, but I'm holding out hope that that might be a step in the right direction. But I also know the pitfalls that, and I know I'm trying to be positive, but it's like every time I got to take a negative. Gosh.
Well, let me ask you this, Tom. Let me ask you this, and I'll pose this to Rob as well. What was the last? I keep using this word. What was the last version or iteration of Star Trek? What was the last Star Trek thing that you liked?
You want to go first, Rob? Or?
Believe it or not, it's Voyager. And I actually had a chance to rewatch Voyager recently, and it holds up very well, actually. Now, look, we didn't like it at the time, but 20 odd years later, I'm like, hey, you know what? This is actually pretty good.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah,
I'm going to surprise everybody and say I actually don't mind Star Trek's Into Darkness and Beyond, the trilogy. The only issues I have with Into Darkness was the whole con.
Yeah.
And just other certain aspects once you start getting to the magic blood stuff at the end. Other than that, it's a very intense movie, and Beyond was probably the closest to Star Trek of all of them.
Yes,
outside of the explosions and stuff, I did have a good time with them, and that's because I can separate that in a sense, knowing that it's an alternate timeline, though.
I will say though, to sort of piggyback on Tom's point, during when I saw the 2009 movie, okay, I was like, how are you going to redo Star Trek? And then when there's that scene where Kirk gets on the shuttle, where he tells the guy, hey, the guy says, nice bike, it's yours. He gets on the shuttle, and then you hear that voice that says, would you please get out of the restroom? I got a seat, I'm in the restroom. And you see Carl Urban as Leonard McCoy, as Dr. McCoy. Right. And then he says, don't you understand? I have aliophobia. That's the fear of dying in something that flies. And then the way his eyes just bug out. And I was like, yep, okay, I'm on board with this. Okay. So that was the moment I said, okay, I'm willing to give this a shot.
Yeah, I had a very similar story, and I've told this before. I might even told on last show, but I'll tell it real quick because I know you want to wrap this up. When the 2009 movie came out, I saw the trailers, and I'm like, what the ever-loving beep? I'm like, this is insane. What are they doing? And my girlfriend at the time was like, I want to go see that. That looks good. I'm like, for every reason that you want to see that, I don't. I'm like, there's no way you're ever going to convince me anybody but William Shatner is Kirk and Leonard Nimoy is Spock and so on down the road. And like Rob, about that scene is when I got on board, because before that I'm like, oh, what the hell what is this? This isn't Star Trek. And then all of a sudden when McCoy walks in, you're like, all right, I see what they're doing here. And this guy has the chops, because I never thought I could see anybody else. Well, then I got on board with that, and then you get into the scenes with the rest of them, and it got me on board in a sense that I could accept it as a different Star Trek, and the characters at least had the spirit of the original characters. Unfortunately, Discovery doesn't have the spirit of Star Trek. It has no soul. It's nothing but a corporate piece of plastic they're trying to sell to you, basically.
Okay, so so much for the positive part.
But unfortunately, but Star Trek, the new movies, unfortunately, as dead as they probably are, were a breath of fresh air to the franchise, but not very long-lived.
Also, Simon Pegg is Scotty. That was another moment. I said, okay, all right, I got it.
He was one of the only ones I was on board with to begin with, originally.
Except for that alien thing that midget
That little monkey guy, yeah.
Yeah. So, Big Sexy, go. It's your turn. One positive, something positive about the state of affairs of Star Trek.
Again, the return in any, guys of Jean-Luc Picard is going to be good. I'm kind of concerned about the direction and future of Discovery, and I'm going to wear the black hat here. I'm not that vested in it anyway. I don't like what's going on behind the scenes, though. You can't grow the Kelvin universe at the expense of the vast history. That's just bad business. If you want to do the Kelvin universe, whatever. But you have a lineage of 60 years of Star Trek that you just can't wipe away. The fans won't let that happen. So I'm a little optimistic, but yet I'm a little curiously guarded too.
All right, so everyone's kind of wrapping their positivity in a shell of negativity, and we're cracking it slowly. All right, so Craig, let's see what you got. Go.
Two positive things. One is that I'm sure in the future they'll re-release the original series movies in 4K, and I'll be buying those.
Okay.
And secondly, there's a small chance that William Shatner will come back as Captain Kirk, and I'm all on board with that.
I hate to be the guy who
Yeah.
sits on stuff, but I have very good source on the whole Paramount and how they treat Star Trek and how they're going to deal with it. For the 50th anniversary, they had a group of people together that are industry people and Star Trek fans to kind of get a grasp on what the fans wanted for the 50th anniversary. And of all the things they asked for and said that we should get, the only thing we got was Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan on Blu-ray, the director's cut. And as far as I know, that is the only movie that has been mastered in 4K. I'm just going to put that out there. None of the series have been. They have no reason to remaster anything past generation as far as they're concerned, even though, because they didn't save the effects files, the effects company guys, being Star Trek fans, did, and have let them know that they still have the files and are willing to work on it and at affordable cost to upgrade the stuff to 4K so they can remaster it. They still are not interested.
Wow.
So at this point, I would highly doubt
the vibe's going
too much more. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be, but I know this for a fact because they said everything that we wanted, and Paramount's like, okay, we're not going to do any of that.
Okay, all right.
Well, that's a bummer. Oh well.
I know, and I'm sorry to tell you this. The only one we'll probably get in 4K anytime soon will be Wrath of Khan. At least we'll get that probably at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Not Nemesis.
Because that I know has a master out there. So
no Nemesis in 4K. Anyway,
there's a good possibility that some of the latter ones might have a 4K master, but I doubt it. See, because 4K wasn't a real big thing until the last few years, and a lot of the studios didn't really future-proof themselves for this stuff.
Right. So
to remaster a lot of these movies again in 4K, especially effects-heavy movies with computers, you're looking at all kinds of different, like, well, do we go back and remaster it or we just fudge it? And a lot of times I've been just fudging it, which means most of the effects shots and stuff you're seeing are just up-converted 2K, if that makes sense.
Just like I downloaded a program from Red Giant where you can up-convert to 4K. That is kind of depressing, but I'm going to bring up the vibe. I'm going to bring it up, man. Okay, positive about Star Trek. Here it is. And I'm going to do the same thing I accuse you guys of. There were a lot of issues with Star Trek Discovery, but overall, it still was an exciting ride. If I could kind of divorce myself from, this is supposed to be Star Trek, this is supposed to be Star Trek, this is supposed to be Star Trek, if I looked at it as not the social commentary that Star Trek tended to be, I still enjoyed it as a whiz-bang action ride. And I have to say, I mean, I really do have to say, and you guys know, I'm not one to play the victim card, or maybe that's not the right term, but it was good to see, a person of color kind of at the forefront. Now, what they did with her, it could be debated that, and I wouldn't argue with you, maybe she did come off as two-dimensional. I think Tom made some good points about she was required to be the quote-unquote hero, whether or not it came across. I thought it did, and a lot of times, like the elevator scene where she kills the mirror version of their one of their helmsmen, and when she goes on and takes on one of the Klingons with when in the premiere where Jojo gets killed. But I completely understand where people who didn't like Discovery. I understand where they're coming from, but I guess I was able to say, you know what? I can't deal with the Kelvin movies. I'm going to get on board with this Star Trek, and I found enough about it to like it. And so much so, and what I could say is that what this Discovery did for me is it has provided me the tools or the wherewithal to actually look at Enterprise and say, you know what? When this came out in 2001 and had the misfortune of coming out right after 9/11, which is why I'm hearing this whole Xindi arc. Tom, you should be familiar with that, right? The Xindi arc, story arc.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, the alien race, yeah.
Being a metaphor for 9/11. Star Trek Discovery, because I was willing to, you might say, lower my expectations. I would say, because I was willing to accept the differences, it made me able to go back and enjoy Enterprise. So it gave me that gift as well. So
I'm kind of glad to hear that. You want to know why, real quick? And I'll shut up because we've drugged the whole ending of your show out for 45 minutes now. I'm glad to hear that because one of the big things and contentions I have with people who defend Discovery is the first jump to they have is, well, the first season of TNG was garbage anyway, and Enterprise sucked, and Voyager was boring. It's like, why do you have to drag the originals down to try and justify your love for Discovery? Why can't you just give me a legitimate reason why you like it? And I'm just so glad to hear that somebody's able to appreciate something more from the past because of. It's a refreshing thing to hear out of somebody who actually enjoys Discovery saying that as opposed to the opposite. And trying to drag the past down. And as far as having, a person of color in charge, it's like that nobody has had a problem with diversity in Star Trek for 60 years now. Mm-hmm. My only issue is they're grandstanding on the fact that they have a black woman as the lead on a show. Where does that leave Nichelle Nichols? Where does that leave characters like Cisco and all this other stuff in the past? It's almost like you're kind of crapping on their legacy in a lot of ways by saying, oh, we're this and we're that, we're all progressive, and holding up Mikey Spock like she's some emblem of diversity, when it's like, guys, Star Trek's always been diverse. That's never been the issue. It's not like it's ever been something that's been called for in the past, because it's always been there. And even when it was limited in the original series, because they were only allowing Roddenberry to do so much, they made up for it so much more in the future series. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you know what? Hey man, props to you, man. That you made a very good argument there. Big Sexy. I don't want to speak for you, but my man Big Sexy, he will be the first to tell you, and I tend to agree with him, that Big Sexy speak. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but he says all the time, just do it. Don't crow about it. Don't preach about it. Don't, gay couple. Hey, gay couple, spotlight. People of color, just go ahead and do it, and make it good. Big Sexy, right? That's
again, it's like you said, and I use this example constantly. In The Wire, one of the best TV shows ever, they had the anti-hero Omar. He was gay. They didn't make a big deal about it. He was still the baddest man in the show. He just happened to be gay. Okay, fine. Let's move with it. Now, on Discovery, we're going to make these two guys gay. Oh, dude, don't.
Right, and that's a good point, because that's one of the first things they advertised about the show. Because when we went back for these last few episodes that we did of our mini documentaries, that's one of the first things that they pointed out, was that they were going to have a gay character on the show.
See, I thought someone
couple on the show.
I thought someone got a hold of that, like a person, like a blogger, and ran with it. The show, the producers didn't leak that, did they?
From my recollection, because it was on one of our early mini documentaries for Star Trek Discovery, that was one of the things. Because I went back and watched a lot of our early stuff in preparation for these, and that was one of the articles that Rob and Andre had dug up originally, was that they were reportedly going to have a black female lead, a gay couple on the show, and all these other things that pretty much came to be. So Yeah, it was like they were basically, it was one of the big things that they stood on from the start.
Okay.
Like, we're going to do this thing, and it's all because it's going to be diverse and bring in the SJW crowd, basically, that doesn't really care.
Right.
That's
Okay.
very much it.
Well, you know, we are. This has been an epic show, guys. I wanted to get into. Let me see if I'm gonna put you guys to the task. Okay, to the test. One word answer. All right. The green speck that lands on Tilly's shoulder when Lorca is killed. What is it?
Snot.
Okay.
He stole my answer. Well, mine was going to be booger, but
You know what? That's brilliant. Let's just leave it there. I love that. And with that, listen, Tom, Rob, I want to say it again. You guys are doing excellent work over there. I have subscribed to you. I haven't subscribed to After Dark. I'm almost afraid to listen to that episode. But you guys...
After Dark is a lot like this. It's more of the laid back, or it's either just the straightforward news or just the laid kickback.
Okay.
And we gotta have you guys on After
We've been
Dark.
wanting to, yes. Yeah. That's been talked about for quite a while.
Well, we will definitely, rise to the challenge if you when you guys need us. And I'm gonna put your information in the show notes to the listeners. As soon as we finish here, go over to Midnight's Edge. These guys are doing some really good stuff. They have some sort of, I don't know, they're like the Borg. They're assimilated, so they get all of this information very easily somehow. But they break down every aspect of Trek that you could possibly want. We had the honor of having them on a previous show. I had to bring them back.
Mm-hmm. You make it sound a lot more easier than it really is.
Yeah.
And Robb Gallo, a man of very humble. He is the voiceover artist for all of those shows that you can see or hear on. The medium gets so mixed up. You can watch them and listen to them on YouTube. He's the voiceover artist. Fantastic work those guys are doing over there. So I implore you to go check them out. Check us out here at Red Shirts. You can check us out at iTunes. Download, subscribe, leave some feedback. You can check us out on Instagram, Facebook. You can check us out at Facebook at Red Shirts, a Star Trek podcast, and on Twitter, Red Shirts at Red Shirts 1701. And with that, once again, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Big Sexy and Craig J. And we are out of here. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Craig.
Let's check this mic.
Okay, short and to the point. Great. Big Sexy.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Nope.
And Rob.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you?
And in one season, Big Sexy, Craig.
Got to spend that Netflix money.
Big Sexy.
See, here's the joke I say, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but bringing back Patrick Stewart reminds me of Patrick Stewart would be like the Trump to Michael Burnham's.
Really, Keith?
Michael Burnham's failed Obama going out of office. Okay, did I trigger some people?
I don't know if I'd go with that comparison.
Well, what do you know?
The equivalent
you
of trending on Twitter.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of trending on Titter. Titter? No, that's a totally different site.
We need to make that though.
Giggity.
Not to be confused with Tinder. Okay.
Yes. But anyway,
no, it's just you show one boob. That's it.
Yeah.
So everybody, male and female.
That might help. Who knows? But let me ask you. I lost my train of thought. Hang on a sec. God, you guys threw a lot at me just now. This is unbelievable.
Sorry.
Red Shirts is not endorsed by Paramount Pictures, Viacom, or CBS. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. Star Trek, the Star Trek logo, and all names, pictures, and audio of Star Trek characters are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of their respective trademark and/or copyright holders.